Welcome to issue 8 of my weekly comic video. This week is going to be something different. It was a very small pull this week with only one comic worth mentioning, and that is Invincible Iron Man number 522. Add in the fact that this comic is coming out faster than once a month, and I have talked about this series a few times now. There isn't much new to show or talk about. Basically, a quick recap. This series has probably been the best Marvel series for some time now, and well worth a purchase and or add to your pull. Since there isn't anything else this week, let's talk about comic reboots. Reboots in comics is something that has been happening with a far higher frequency than what it used to. The concept of a reboot is a method publishers use to help drive new business and to restart a character or world that had been mistreated to the point where they don't know where to go with them anymore. Reboots are different than retcons in that retcons is a method used to ignore a portion of what happened to a universe or a character and not just starting over with them. There are basically two different types of reboots: an industry reboot and a character reboot, or character and world reboot. Industry reboots generally change the tone and often the look of the comic. Probably the most famous reboots known would be the different ages, the golden, silver, bronze, modern. This is how characters like Batman, who became something like the Adam West show, turned into what we all know and love. For the most part, this type of reboot is understandable. It basically changes things to what it needs to in order to grow and become more relevant to the current generation. Character and world reboots are the ones that most of the time just end up being a slap in the face to the collector. Up until the late 90s, Marvel had been pretty good when it came to reboots. Generally, when a character change was needed, they wrote the change into the story. Example being Thor, who has seen many relaunches, but really never much of a reboot. Then came the horrible Onslaught storyline. This event ended by rebooting several of the more popular comics, including Fantastic Four, Avengers, Iron Man, and Captain America. Spider-Man was left out because he had his own story going on and it was selling marginally well. Of course, this reboot wouldn't stick, and we were given another reboot basically a year later, which brought everyone back into the normal fold. With that idea down the drain, Marvel did something unique by creating the Ultimate Universe in the year 2000. This was Marvel's way of bringing in new readers, but not ruining the universe readers already knew. In short, the Ultimate Universe was a retelling of the common Marvel characters, but in a more modern sense. This proved to be successful initially, but it quickly died out as time went on. The universe is still going as of today, and they do have some good ideas here and there, but the thunder it made back at launch is gone and probably forever. Marvel wasn't really satisfied with the results of the Ultimate lineup, but saw the benefit of relaunching a series. So that is what they have been doing more than actual full reboots. However, this is still annoying simply because they will start over a book with a #1 issue, but when the book overall reaches a pivotal point, like say issue number 500, the new numbering will be dropped and the old numbering will continue. This is why there are comics that go from issue 71 or whatever up to number 501 in the next issue. As a collector, this stinks. One of the joys of collecting the books is to have runs. It makes the comics more valuable and easy to keep in order, which is totally messed up when they can't keep to a single numbering scheme. Probably the biggest and most well-known reboot, probably forever, that Marvel has done was with Spider-Man and One More Day. Now, this story has been ridiculed enough that I don't need to go into much detail about it, but basically 30 plus years of Spider-Man comics instantly became pointless, all thanks to a 4-issue story that the creative team thought was necessary for the character's development. I have a different theory on why they did this, though. It was basically to accomplish 2 things. One, Amazing Spider-Man has always sold rather well, at least up to this point, and even during the Clone Saga. But the spin-off books were failing, so Marvel decided to ditch the other books and make Spider-Man a bi-weekly book instead. This way, the quote-unquote spin-off books would sell just as well as Amazing. Second reason for the reboot was to kick off the bi-weekly idea itself from a press standpoint, mainly because you see there was another character that was approaching its 700th issue, and Marvel wanted one of their characters to hit a milestone first, so they cheated in order to make that happen. DC Comics is more famous for their reboots than Marvel. Wonder Woman is a prime example of this, what with being rebooted almost once a year it seems. However, most of their older reboots came out of their Infinity crossover events. Well, most of these changes were simply changing a character, example being with Supergirl. DC decided to keep changing some of their less than popular characters until something ultimately stuck with the readers. There wasn't too much of a fan backlash with this, exceptions being with Wonder Woman and Donna Troy, simply because most of the reboots that happened to characters, well, let's just say those characters weren't all that great to begin with. Enter DC's Big 52 relaunch. DC had been in some rough waters for some time at this point. Amazon's Attack, Countdown, Identity Crisis, Battle for Bloodhaven, Final Crisis, and just about every other big crossover event for the last 10 plus years or so just didn't work out very well, and oftentimes it just painted the characters into a corner that the editors wouldn't allow the writers to fix. So in grand comic book fashion, instead of showing development and moving the characters along, they just hit the reboot button and erased all the bad things that had happened. I was a bigger fan of Marvel growing up, so I probably wasn't as mad about this as some others, but I can only imagine what the fans must be going through with this. I mean, this is technically One More Day times 52. Was it a success? We will have to see if DC retcons this out or not, but I don't really know if this was a win for DC or not. Sure, the first few issues of each of the series did extremely well, but we are talking about issue number 1. which generally always sell better than normal. My 2 cents on the reboot is that DC put more focus on some of their less popular books like Batgirl and Wonder Woman, and let the popular ones just ride out the storm. And to that end, they probably have been successful. I know I, for one, didn't really like Stephanie Brown's Batgirl, and I don't think I have ever collected Wonder Woman books before, but since the reboot, I actually started picking up some of those books, and I haven't been enjoying them more than the your typical runs. The comic industry as a whole seems more focused on getting new readers than maintaining the fan base that they have. This is problematic and completely undermines what comics are. Continuity is a big thing when it comes to collecting, and while I can understand how it can be threatening to new readers, the books can be written so that continuity only plays in when the readers are interested in finding out why something is the way it is. We really didn't have the internet or wiki or anything else when I started collecting comics, and I was fine with the long-standing continuity of the characters. Why the Hulk was now gray when he guest appeared in Fantastic Four actually just made me want to track down the trades or issues in the Hulk book to find out why. Me not knowing didn't take away anything from the book I was reading, yet it is a reward for those that have been collecting for years and knows why. The worst part about all these reboots is that it could have been so much easier to do. I'm not a fan of the Ultimate line of Marvel books. Personally, I always saw it as a waste of talent that could have gone into the main books and had been just as big of effect. However, I applaud them for trying to change things up. Example being replacing Peter Parker with someone else who isn't a clone. I am one of those collectors that have no problems with getting rid of the characters, but keeping the concept. It allows the book to reboot without losing its history, and it brings in fresh new stories that we haven't already read a million times over. There really isn't a reason why characters in comics can't age and be replaced. Look at the success of Batman Beyond, or the changes made with all the different Flash and Green Lantern characters throughout the ages. I know I'm probably in the minority about most of this, and there really isn't a solution. Not buying the books is not exactly a good way, or it hasn't exactly proven to be a good way to tell the different publishers and writers and whatever that we don't like what they're doing. And really, if it does end up being a success with the new 52 reboots, then I can't really complain about DC going the wrong way or whatnot when it's actually quite profitable for them. We've got a lot more reboots in the near future. DC's constantly rebooting new characters and bringing them in the fold, along with going down something like the Ultimate line and doing the, different universe type of thing, which has some very disturbing storylines. So there's a lot of stuff still happening in that camp. In fact, they've sort of listened to a lot of the criticism that was thrown their way when they did the relaunch, and we will have a coming this September. DC is publishing. Basically, everything's gonna be on a hiatus, which I kind of hate in its own right. But DC is going to print a bunch of issue number 0, which basically, hopefully, will clear up a lot of the misconceptions of the characters, and hopefully will explain a lot of the the holes that were created or unknowns created by the relaunch. Don't know yet if it's going to be any really all that great or not. The fact that it is going to replace the series, the current series for that month, and not just be a special one shot that releases in conjunction with the series, kind of makes me think that DC put a little bit of effort into this, because I mean that's a pretty big risk for the company to hold everything for a month and basically give a whole bunch of background. Hopefully it's not just origin stories. That would be a waste. I don't want a book that tells me the origin of Superman or Batman again. But hopefully it'll plug in a lot of the big questions that we have from the reboot. Marvel is going down a somewhat different path when it comes to the reboots. They are planning on resetting the series after this horrible Avengers versus X-Men story is complete. The big problem I have with Marvel is this is like the fifth or sixth restarting of all this, of at least most of the main series that we've had in the last 5 years. Basically, it resets almost once a year. And the Avengers are even worse than that. The Avengers books have restarted many times within the last 5 years. It's kind of disheartening when you look at it from that perspective. I don't think it's going to be a reboot. Actually, they have said that it's not going to be a reboot. Like, they're not going to start over with characters or anything like that. It's just going to be a restarting of the series for whatever reason. I know that they're planning on doing a lot of changes with Spider-Man. Not a reboot. And until Joe Quesada gets off his high horse, they'll never be able to fix the series by retconning One More Day and Brand New Day and all that other nonsense. But we'll see what comes out. Comes out from Marvel. Marvel's really been suffering quite a bit these past few years in their comics. I can't imagine that their sales have been all that great. I know their typical ones like Spider-Man will always sell well, but their other lines of books probably just haven't been doing so well, and that there's been a lot of editorial choices and whatnot that have really hurt that. The funny thing is that a lot of the writers and such, like Scott Lobdell and stuff like that, who were the pioneers, I guess, of ruining a bunch of Marvel books that used to be very popular, like X-Men and stuff like that, has actually changed camps to DC. And not just him, but there are a couple of them that were in that same group have moved over to DC and have been doing a lot of books over there that haven't been doing very well. So this may be just something that there's a group of writers and artists or whatever that wherever they go, they kind of create problems. But anyway, it's interesting to see how things are going. It's not all dark or anything else like that. The Green Lantern stuff, which pretty much ignored the reboots in the DC universe, have been very entertaining since all the way back to the Sinestro War, pretty much. Jeff Johns has really been the driving figure in that particular area. He has been kind of the one put in charge of the DC universe as a whole, and we'll just see how He goes with things. I haven't been that impressed with his Justice League run. Then again, that is one of the series that has gotten the biggest amount of flack, in my opinion, since the reboot. It's a total slap in the face to collectors and stuff like that, and it really undermines the characters and the history and everything that was built on them. So we'll kind of see where that goes. I know from in the Marvel camp, Brian Michael Bendis is finally finishing his 10-year run in the comics, pretty much, or his vision in the comics. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how things go without him. We haven't really seen much from Marvel outside of him since the Avengers Disassembled stuff. So we're in for a bit of a change, and that could be the reason for the reboot. Who knows? From the Marvel standpoint. So kind of stay tuned. There's a lot of stuff happening in the industry. I hope that it can retain some of its momentum that it used to in the past. Unfortunately, with all these reboots and series restarts and stuff like that, it's just not going to happen. Right now, the only reason why the industry is surviving is because of their movies. Their movies and animated shows and stuff like that are what's bringing in the mad dollars, and not really the comics. And then you have Disney buying Marvel and all that stuff. So there's a lot of things shaking up the industry, but so far there's no evidence that it's going to ever return to its former glory, which is kind of sad. But anyway, I rambled on long enough. Hopefully next week will be a bigger pull than this week. Who knows? The last couple of weeks before this have been extremely large, so who knows how that's all going to end up. I do have a lot of manga to cover, so if I do get some more smaller weeks, I'll move into that territory a little bit. But until then, as always, thanks for watching, and God bless.